Okay, so tonight we're looking at The Ease of Being by Jean Klein. And I'm going to, this is a question and answer format here. So the questioner, I'll begin with the questioner, and he says to Jean, spiritual teachers often say the world of phenomena appears and disappears, and there's nothing the person need do. But most of us feel the need to control our lives. Jean, why control life? It has no need of control. Life takes itself in charge. Trying to control life means living in memory, in repetition, in the continual process of having and becoming. But once you drop this urge to control, you are without conflict, and you are the one, and you are one with the current of life. Once you, I'm repeating this, once you drop this urge to control, you are without conflict, and you are one with the current of life. Be a spectator to the spectacle. The play goes on, but you are in the audience watching. If you go up on the stage and become involved in the play, you're lost. Questioner, I've never pursued, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm skipping that, I'm sorry. It's difficult for me, the questioner says, to observe fear when I'm totally caught up in it. Jean, look at the mechanism of fear. See what is before this fear. What associations have brought you to this state? You feel a sensation and you label it fear. You project an image of an I, a me, who feels afraid, and then place this image in a dark forest before a huge lion. The projection of yourself as a man, as a personality, arouses fear because the personality needs a situation to exist. Many of us prefer to suffer, prefer prolonging a hopeless condition, because this gives the I, the me, a place to cling. If the I has nothing to grasp, it dies. But we must become accustomed to dying. See each situation afresh without referring to a past image of yourself. When you stop projecting a person, an image of yourself as a man, as intelligent, as a certain kind of personality, as having so many lovers and so on, what happens? You are still and alert, but not alert to something. Then the situation doesn't belong to an image, but to global consciousness. When you are afraid, the I is involved in this fear and cannot intentionally let it go. This I image drops away the moment fear becomes perception. Now, I'm just stopping here for a moment because it's important. I just want to clarify this. When he says this, you know, it's when there is an awareness of the perception that we're labeling fear, you're already out of it. in that moment. Now, it'll come up again, but always when there is a choiceless awareness, a direct perception of a sensation, in this case, fear, you're already out of it in order to have seen it.
So most of us just react automatically to our sensations, whatever they may be. And he's encouraging making the sensation, if it's fear or envy or jealousy or any sensation, make it an object of your perception.
Correct.
Mhm.
But it has to be with choiceless awareness.
Yes.
And he's going to tell you that in a minute. And as fear needs stimulation from an image to exist, when there is no image, there is no fear. The idea of being an individual and separate entity is incorrect. An independent entity doesn't exist. You are one with the stars, with the moon, with animals, plants, and stones, and with society. You have no existence independent of the whole. Well, the questioner says, if the individual doesn't exist, what does? John, thoughts, emotions, and perceptions exist, but there's nothing personal in these. The I is a convention in human relationship. It exists as a concept, but has no reality. Accept life. Let it happen. You are not your life, only an observer sitting in the audience regarding your actor on stage. The actor may play a hero or husband or someone in pain, but he knows he's acting. He is not identified with the role. It's the same thing in your life. Questioner, well, then there's nothing to do. John, there is nothing to do. When you look deeply, you will see the most doing, that most doing is reacting. Pure, motiveless observation alone is empty of reaction, for there is nobody to react. Now, here he introduces pure motiveless, and that's equivalent to Krishnamurti's choiceless awareness. No motive, an observation that has no motive. And that's a choiceless observation. Questioner, I don't understand why I feel so uncomfortable in silence. John, if you try to be silent, you can't be. Silence is your original nature. There's no need to try to be what you naturally are. Just notice when you aren't silent. We can only really speak of communication when we remain silent. Life's beauty lies in communication, but not the kind occurring between two objects, between two personalities, between two images. There's no meaning, no play left in a relationship between two images, between the idea of being a man and the idea of being a woman. In silence, There's no man or woman. There's only love. Then communication is communion. Questioner, it's so easy to play the role. Jean, don't play the role at all. Taking yourself as a man means you must fulfill so many qualifications. How to present yourself, how to give yourself, how to speak, how to act. You've even been educated to think in terms of being a man, confined by all those labels. The same holds true when you take yourself for a father or a mother. There is no man or woman, no father or mother. Stop projecting into your surroundings and let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. Let me read that again. Stop projecting means stop projecting your image. You know, the image you have of a mother, or the image of a man, or the image of a woman. Stop projecting the image into your surroundings and let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. The image is the memory. Without memory. Look at things as if for the first time. Be completely undressed, shapeless, nameless. You are just a beautiful being, nothing more. And this requires no education. Simply be the beautiful being you naturally are. Questioner, well, if I were to behave that way, I'd feel as if I had no protection, as if I were defenseless. Jean, whom would you like to protect? There is nobody to defend. When you wake up in the morning and find yourself in a certain frame of mind, a state of tension, for example, make it an object of observation. Feel it, accept it. It requires very little to accept something, but our acceptance is usually only psychological. I'm speaking here of accepting the actual function, the sensation of the tension. More often than not, we try to escape our sensations. We say, I feel afraid, and escape in this idea. Or we phone a friend, or we read a book. But when you accept a perception, it is no longer fixed, and it blossoms and then dissolves back into your awareness, your acceptance. When you accept something totally, without judging or qualifying, acceptance is awareness. And in this, you are completely free, completely. It's beautiful, this feeling of freedom that comes in accepting life, accepting what you are. So, any questions, any comments? What did you hear? Is there anything you'd like me to go over again?
I don't know. I just ended up seeing a movie this afternoon. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's called Nomadland.
Yes,
You
we,
saw it?
we
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah, and the movie is about, for the benefit of people who haven't seen it, the movie is about a woman whose husband worked for a gypsum company in Nevada, and the whole company went down, and her husband ended up dying. She ended up homeless, and she lives out of her van for all year long. And we were talking about being accepting what is. And to me, in that movie, she was homeless, but she wasn't really pushing against being homeless. She was almost in total acceptance of being, living close to the beauty of nature and um, the love of other people that were surrounding her. And she really wasn't pushing against her circumstances. I see so many times in my life where I'm thinking about why couldn't things be better than they are? And it's so easy to get caught up in it. I left the movie feeling sort of very whole, very,
Mhm.
very complete, because it's easier to see that in somebody else and sort of accept it for yourself. So I thought I really liked what he said about accepting.
Yes, yes. And he says, in a way, don't fight life, don't resist it. Be a spectator to the spectacle, remain a witness, a choiceless observer. Attention is motiveless. So interesting also, he said acceptance is awareness. And actually, when there's choiceless awareness, there is acceptance of the what is, because you're not judging it and you're not resisting it. You're fully present with that moment.
It's interesting, choiceless awareness. Most of the time, our awareness is full of choices because the awareness is centered around the me. And the me always believes it has choices, conditioned choices that I've been led and conditioned to think I should fit an image and accomplish this or that. So choiceless awareness, while there's an active me at the center of it, is the active me in the center of it, what gets in the way of being choiceless, because the ego is full of choices.
Well, yes. And then he says here, the ego can't exist unless it's got a situation that it can attach to. And that's really very interesting. And I think that's why we tend to create a lot of drama in our lives, because it gives the ego, it's almost like a building up of this me, because it can attach to a situation and it can suffer, it can judge, it just blossoms in a situation, and it looks for situations. He says, many of us prefer to suffer, prefer prolonging a hopeless condition, because this gives the I or the me or the ego a place to cling. If the I has nothing to grasp, it dies. But we must become accustomed to dying. And of course, what he means here is dying, psychologically dying. dying in the moment.
Yeah.
Being fully present in the moment and then dying to the moment.
The ego clings to the choices. Is that what you were saying?
I hope that because this gives a place to cling. It gives the I a place to cling.
Right.
If the I has nothing to grasp, it dies.
I was reading today a little observation about consumer capitalism. And one of the byproducts of consumer capitalism is the plethora of choices that people have in their lives. And there's so many choices that people, it leads to a paralysis because people can't choose. I remember working with a young man who couldn't decide to get married because every time he thought he was with a woman that he would want to marry, he said, but how do I know something better is not going to come along? I can meet somebody next week that's more beautiful, more intelligent, more this, more that. Why should I narrow my choices? There's so many opportunities. That's the me-centered clinging to the possibility of choice.
Well, and a lot of that comes through the conditioning that the thinking comes from your consciousness, from your memory. And the thing that I think I have to constantly remind myself is that memory is not accurate. It's not an accurate recording of the senses because it's processed through the I, through the me.
Sure.
And we've been brought up since childhood to have that vision distorted by what the society figures is a standard for you to grow up in. You want to grow up to be a nice little boy and a nice little girl, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and you got to distort what the reality is. So we don't understand seeing what is, and that's what causes the problem, I think, for me. What a lot of this work has done is it makes me aware to be aware and what awareness is, and that's about the best tool that I have to try to help myself through this, through these difficult times when I'm caught up in the me, the I.
Yeah.
And but with this knowledge, I can let go of it. It's a lot easier to let go of it because I have an understanding of how it works.
Ugo, I'm reminded listening to what you just said, Abraham Maslow, who studied self-actualized individuals, and the self-actualized person is the person that has met many of the lower needs and then gets closer to a self-transcendent perspective. So he said that his self-actualized subjects had a clearer perception of reality and better relations with it.
Yeah, it's good. Great.
Yeah.
Great. And it dovetails right in with that whole concept of acceptance. Because if you can see reality, how can you fight reality? I mean, it's insane. You can't make that tree turn into a rock. It's not going to happen. You want a rock there, you got to put it there. You want a tree there, you've got to put it there. But I know that a good deal of my life was, projecting what I wanted things to be rather than seeing them what they were, which raises a lot of conflict in me. And then it gets the anxiety and it interferes with your health and your decision making and so on and so forth. It's really, you open up and there's a can of worms, but thank God there's something in there that you can deal with and you tackle it.
I find that one of the things I really need to accept are like moods, like whatever mood I happen to be in. And this morning I woke up in like not a very good mood because I hadn't slept well, and I got out of bed and like I just felt this mild anxiety or like conflict or a little resentment towards someone. And but like my mind was saying like, oh, why can't I be in the mood I was in yesterday? Which was much better. But then I saw it and I thought like, oh, it's just my mind. Like that's so changeable. And instantly it kind of dissolved, and all of a sudden I was just like looking at this iris in my garden, and the whole day was great. But the story was like, oh, you're in this mood now. This is what your day is going to be like. You know, why couldn't it have been like yesterday? Like, and so it was a state of non-acceptance.
Right.
And you stepped outside it.
Yeah, but suddenly it seemed like there was a choice, like a good choice. I could stay there or I could let it go. I mean, maybe there's some good choices.
But what do you think precipitated the perception? Because in a split second,
Mhm.
there was an awareness, a choiceless awareness of this,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And but you don't know what precipitated that. It just happened.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, maybe there was some acceptance. This is how I'm feeling, and I sort of saw it objectively.
See, because I think that's really important. Because that's what they're talking about, you know, whether it's Krishnamurti or now Jean, you know, watching what's going on, the movements that are moving through the mind.
Right, right.
So, Rosine, what was it that that stopped you from spending the entire day in that down mood?
Yeah, because something woke up and saw it, I guess, saw the mood and realized I do have a choice, you know.
So listen, that's interesting. So the mood became an object of your perception
Yes,
Right,
yes,
Yes.
rather than just being carried along with it, as he was saying earlier about
Yes,
sensations.
Right.
exactly.
And with the mood, there's all these stories,
Right, right.
That's right.
all not nice.
Mhm.
Right.
And
And causing pain.
yes, yeah. Which
So
is
once
all the
you,
more obvious on a beautiful morning when,
yeah,
but I realized like I can fight with my moods like that and say like, oh, why don't I feel like I felt the other day when I felt like, oh my God, the sky, everything, like
mhm,
this
mhm.
oneness. And because I like this theme of acceptance,
Yes.
because that's conflict. Like I shouldn't be feeling this way. Like,
Well, that's right. That was the me
mhm.
taking a stand. Why couldn't it be like it was
Right,
yesterday?
right. Like Hugo is just saying, you
Yeah,
know, why can't it be
right.
something
Other
else?
than what it
Something
is.
else, something other than what it is.
Well, look, here he says, when you wake up in the morning
Oh,
and find yourself in a certain frame of mind, a state of tension, for example, make it an object of observation. Feel it, accept it. It requires very little to accept something, but our acceptance is usually only psychological. I'm speaking here of accepting the actual function, the sensation of the tension. So it's really accepting the whole thing. The sensation of the tension. More often than not, we try to escape our sensations. We say, I feel afraid, and escape in this idea. Or we phone a friend, or we read a book. But when you accept a perception, it is no longer fixed, and it blossoms and dissolves back into your awareness. So if it blossoms, the tension may, once there is a seeing of it, a choiceless seeing of it, it may blossom even stronger, but then it fades, it dissipates back into, as he says, your awareness, your acceptance. When you accept something totally, without judging or qualifying, right? You know, I shouldn't accept this, I shouldn't be feeling this, without qualifying. Acceptance is awareness. And in this, you are completely free, completely. In that moment, Rosine, you were free.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a story anymore.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. That's right.
Could it be that when you have this feeling, like, you know, you get a feeling, and sometimes you search around and try to figure out, is it tension? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Rather than do that, just be with the feeling, because the minute you start to try to define it, you're handing it over to the ego to work with it. You're giving the
Right.
ego something to work with.
Absolutely.
Right,
And,
the
and
ego just
so
wants to
if
get
you
rid of it.
don't, if you starve the ego from any kind of attention, then you're letting the body work out whatever the body does
Oh,
with,
I
with the
really,
feeling that you have. It just, you know, eventually it'll stop hurting, or it'll hurt more. But you're not. I don't know how to explain it, but I see
no.
myself doing that.
Yes, you did explained it well. I like that phrase, starving the ego, because yes, otherwise we hand it back over to the me. And the me creates more of a story
Mhm.
about whatever's going on. And when there's an awareness of the tension or whatever, the sensation, I mean, if we don't label it, if we don't name it, you know, what if there's an awareness of this tightness, wherever the feeling is in the body, and we don't name it fear, or we don't name it tension, or we don't name it desire, then we're just sitting with that sensation. And if we stay with it, let it get stronger if it needs to. But if we don't do anything with it, create a story about it, or go in and editorialize about it, we shouldn't be feeling this, we should be, it's got no place to go but to leave. And that, Ugo, is what you were calling starving the me, starving the ego.
And I think also, like, part of my sometimes, you know, being in a telling a story that things have to be a certain way and things have to work out a certain way, or I'm not going to be happy and at peace. But like the opposite, like, well, however it turns out, I can still be in this state of mind. It's
Yeah.
very liberating. Like, it doesn't, it's not so contingent over who does what or says what or what plans work out or don't. Like, it doesn't really matter if
Right.
there's not an ego. Like, there's,
That's right.
it
You're not
matters a lot less. Yeah.
you're not dependent on something outside of you
Yeah.
to
Sounds
make you
obvious.
happy. You know, Jean says here, I think this is such a good, he says here, you are primal awareness. Life is only primal awareness. Between two thoughts or two perceptions, you are. You know moments in your life when a thought completely disappears into silence, but still you are. Let me read that again.
Mhm.
You are primal awareness. Life is only primal awareness. Between two thoughts or between two perceptions, you are, the you being the primal awareness. You know moments in your life when a thought completely disappears into silence, but still you, primal awareness, are.
Mhm.
You're never not aware.
Consciousness bereft of concepts.
Right, right. And that's something that's not a concept because we can know it. It's something
Right, you can experience.
you can experience that.
Mhm.
It's not a theory. It's not a concept. We know that that's exactly what happens. Things, thoughts appear, disappear, but awareness is. They appear in our awareness, in awareness. I'm not, let's cross out our awareness because as you said before, it's really not personal. The awareness that you are is the same awareness that I am. It's awareness. The content of our consciousness may be somewhat different based on our conditioning.
Mhm.
But that choiceless awareness that life is, that we are, we know it, we are it. And all that appears and disappears in it.
What you said reminds me of the saying, the music happens in the stillness between the notes.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I just want to say so much clarity from Hugo these past couple calls. I'm really excited and happy for him with
Oh.
with all of his explanations and what he's been saying. It's helped me out.
Good. Good, good, good. What about when he says about there's no man, there's no woman, there's no image, that we create this image, right? From memory and from childhood on, we create an image about ourselves. I'm this, I'm not that, right? We create images about ourselves. Even we create images about our, obviously, not even our bodies. He's saying, stop projecting that image into your surroundings and let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. So what is that? Let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. The me is memory. The image is memory. If we don't project that into a situation, then that situation or the presence fully captures you. There's no separation then. You know, this morning, I also had something happened here. Someone in the family had a procedure, a heart procedure, then was better, and then had a heart attack, but is okay. But initially, finding out about this, there was an awareness of a sensation which was labeled fear. And there was an immediate projection of a terrible, sad situation. Fortunately, there was a complete awareness, a choiceless awareness of all that was going on in the mind and in the body, because it was going on in both places. The fear was in the stomach and in the chest, and the thoughts were just running on about projecting the worst scenario. But there was a choiceless awareness of that. And in that moment of the choiceless awareness, there was calm. And then there was clarity about how to proceed with the situation based on the facts of the situation, which were not conclusive at this point. So it's just, I really don't know if there's any other way truly to free ourselves of this me other than being fully present with presence in that moment and let it capture us. Using that spotlight of choiceless awareness, it's not even using it. It's the seed for it has been planted through what Jean says, through what Krishnamurti says, through what Ira was teaching. The seed of it has already been planted. And so it comes up when we least expect it, when we're not thinking about it, and we can't force it because then it's the me doing it. And there is a difference between awareness, that's part of the me. So it's like the mind has created fear, the me has created fear, and that which is looking at the fear is the me. That's different. Then mind has created fear, and there is a choiceless awareness of that sensation. So there's no thought that's passing. There is total emptiness, full of awareness. If we want to talk about practice, I think that's a pretty good practice. And knowing what he says, I thought this was so lovely. But let me see if I can find it. Well, there are two things he says. In silence, there's no man or woman. There's only love. Then communication is communion. And then he says, look at things as if for the first time, without any images, right? Without the me. Be completely undressed, shapeless, nameless. You are just a beautiful being, nothing more. And this requires no education. Simply be the beautiful being you naturally are.
I would like to say hello. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Robert. And my dear friend, Kevin, alerted me to your activities here, and I'm just tickled pink to make contact with members of my species who are navigating their way to a different, awakened, a different navigational system other than their ego. Often I've thought that we're now in history that we get like front row seats to either that there's going to be like a massive awakening, a massive blossoming of human beings, becoming aware of the ego and all of its done. It's like a make it or break it moment in the history of our species. I've always found myself really interested in different like literatures and things that people have written about consciousness. In the 70s, I kind of fell upon the work of Jane Roberts, who she was channeling for a personality called Seth in upstate New York. And he wrote books about adventures in consciousness. And one of the reasons I picked it up was I was working in a restaurant and somebody was reading this book, and they were like talking about like trees communicating with like people before language. And it echoed like memories that I had as a child, because trees were my earliest friends. And I felt a connection with trees, when I was 3, because there were no children around. But at any rate, the point that about that, I ramble a little, I'm sorry. There was one part in some of the literature that Seth was talking about, was like the origins of ego, as that consciousness was evolving and we moved away from instincts, that the ego rose in our consciousness as a system of organizing beliefs for the survival of the organism and the survival of the tribe, that that we would like learn what was dangerous, and what could happen. And I think when we look at the last few thousand years, human beings have been attacking each other, killing each other. We're a species that killed hundreds of millions of our own kind, more than any other on the planet. All of a sudden I've gotten really nervous talking to strangers in the middle of this, but I mean, this is a topic that's like so near and dear to me. I just wanted to sort of segue to some personal experience of mine that echoes everything that you're talking about, in this book, is that I was fortunate enough in 2013 to acquire a cabin deep in the Adirondack State Park. I bought it fully furnished from some lovely people. It's a long driveway into the woods. And there's nothing in the house that echoes anything of my past. I've been living in New York City for more than 50 years. And very often when I walk down familiar streets in Soho or Greenwich Village, my past identity, comes up. But here I am very often sitting on the porch, which is a very wonderful monastic place to be in the moment, in a house with no gestalt of my past, watching my identity kind of slip away. There was nothing reminding me of who I was, with my dog sitting in my lap, surrounded by birds, coyotes, trees, everything just existing. No, all of this life form gloriously with this wind, all of this existence. And initially it was kind of terrifying that I felt myself, as you say, dying, that I was sort of clinging, onto, my ego, because I think my ego is an ancient system that's in my body, and its job has been to protect my organism. It's basic. It did have an original function that helped us live, because we didn't have instincts like animals, and it's maybe perhaps outlived its purpose, and it creates all this fear, and it creates all this hatred. It creates this psychic pain. It lives on pain. But there I am on the porch, and this is all slipping away from me, like my whole, every aspect of my identity. And with my dog sitting in my lap, and my dog is taking it all in, and I'm like, I'm going to be like the dog. And I'm perfectly in the moment, with like no fear in the future, no rehashing of the past, no social security number, no favorite bands, no Prada, no, no hipper than thou. No, all of the busyness, and completely filled with bliss, of just like being, completely connected to the trees, just sort of stumbling into this, ego dying, and then existence being like the most fucking glorious,
Exactly.
It's very
Yes.
nice to be here. It's very nice to
Good.
be here and see your
Good.
faces.
Good.
And listen to this, and thank you for letting me
Good.
say hello.
Good.
Sure.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice to connect.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to bring something up before we call it a night?
I'd like to share maybe a question. I don't know if you guys can answer it, but with what Bentley was saying, let me turn my video on. It arose the question, maybe it's another ego question, but if it weren't for the ego, would pure consciousness be able to even observe itself? So I wonder if, I mean, obviously it's all part of the game. It's all part of life and the grand dance that's going on. But this ego that we've turned into an enemy is there to protect us. But without it, could we even notice the silence underneath?
That's, without it is how we notice the silence underneath. But you see, the ego really isn't an enemy.
No.
You know, we do.
We've created it by, it's the ego. It's the ego calling the ego an enemy to make the ego feel
Right.
The
Right.
ego can't get rid of itself for the ego's
Right.
for the
Yeah. Right. The ego is never going to get rid of itself. And, you know, is there a me independent of thought and thinking and memory? And if there isn't, then would I not be able to function even better with more clarity and with more compassion? Because there isn't a personal agenda of a separate entity that is frightened and is full of desire and frustration. So that's, I think, an important question to ask ourselves.
Yeah, and it may not be the ego that has helped us survive. Beyond the ego, there's a natural intelligence that operates
Right,
when the ego isn't in the way.
that's right.
And so, and I think Evelyn's point is well taken. You know, if you sit quietly and there is no movement of thought, where's the ego then? The ego comes with the movement of thought. And thought is great to help me plan for the future.
Yes.
Thought is great to help me
Technology working,
technology,
the computer.
everything. But thought about my personal image, thoughts about the past and having regrets, thoughts about projecting into the future with fear, that's when thought doesn't know its proper place and it creates mischief. So it's really important to distinguish what kind of thinking we're involved in. You know, one of the other members of the group, Bill, used to say, you know, there's stinking thinking, which we're all kind of in the grips of more times than not. But the use of thought has a right place.
Yes,
And we've got to be able to know when it's
of course.
serving us and when it's hurting us.
Psychologically.
Right,
you using your mind versus your mind using you, I guess.
right.
Yes.
Well said.
Yes.
Like you were describing this morning, Ev, when you'd gotten news of, you know, the family member, and you said that, you know, naturally there's some fear and anxiety, but when your mind became peaceful, it became really clear and you knew the next thing to do. Like that's the knowing.
That's right. That's right. There was clarity. The situation, the facts of the situation told me what to do.
Right. Instead of all the stories and the anxiety and fear dictating what to do.
Right. Well,
Okay,
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Very much.
And we'll
have a good week and we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank
See
you.
you guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Roisin.
Bye. Bye, Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.